Welcome to the latest edition of Anxiety Free Selling. We are super lucky today because we have a sales master on the call, Brian G. Burns. And he has his own podcast, and I'm going to have y'all go check him out as well. He talks about leadership for salespeople, CMOs, and who am I missing here? Marketing. So he has one of the fastest growing companies in the world, and he wants to get that information to you and learn what's working today in sales. So I'd like to welcome you to the show today, Brian. Thanks for being here.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. Look forward to talking over some sales stuff with you.
Yeah, I'm super pumped because you are the sales guru. So I know I really enjoy your podcast, and I was recently on it. So thank you for that. And it's fun to turn the tables on you.
Yeah, so, you're in charge now.
Yeah, I'm in charge now. So, Brian, why don't you kind of give us a little bit of background about how you started to where you got now, and then we'll just jump into some hardcore sales questions.
Yeah, I've been doing sales for about 30 years now. I started off, in high school as a shoe sales guy, went to college, learned to program at night, became an engineer. But then I noticed that the salespeople were leaving at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I was still there. They were driving home in Porsches, and I was riding my bike home. And I thought maybe I should check out how it works.
Yeah.
So they started pulling me out on sales calls with them to be the engineer, to do the demo, to talk to the customer. And I figured out that I could probably learn that. And so it took a while. But once I got the bug, I never looked back. It was just so much fun. I really loved working with customers. I liked having control over my income, and I liked the competitiveness of it, both internally and externally. And, it has its ups and downs, but I learned to really love it.
That's kind of really interesting that you came from it from that perspective. What do you think having that kind of analytical mindset kind of helps differentiate you than the typical salesperson?
I think it does a lot, because in software, what you do is you break a problem down into tiny little pieces, as opposed to trying to start the problem or start the solution and work your way forward. You take tiny little pieces. And if you do that in sales, it's a lot easier. Instead of saying, well, I've got to go sell this huge quota. How do I do it? And a lot of people I'm going to pound the phones until I get somebody, instead of let's break it down. Who's most likely to buy? What do they care about? How do I focus my time in the most constructive way? How do I build a methodical step-by-step process to keep everything moving? So it really helped. And also, both my parents were salespeople. So I kind of grew up in a sales environment. So it wasn't foreign to me.
So you were kind of like Marilyn and the Munsters and your family. They're all
or Eddie, maybe. I was the dragon underneath the staircase.
Right, exactly. Oh, goodness. So now every time I talk to salespeople, I get this question a lot about, how do I find more prospects? So you've interviewed gazillions of salespeople. So how do you find more prospects, Brian?
Well, that's the number one question everyone asks. And what they really mean is, how do I find more people who want to buy my stuff?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So the people who want to buy your stuff find you. Okay. The people who might want to buy your stuff are the people you really want to find. So you want to think about who is most likely to be interested in what I sell. What size company, what their title is, what stage of the company, how long they've been there, whatever dynamic is there. You got to think more like a detective than just a bull in a china shop. Too many people just get so excited or so comfortable in the activity trap that they turn their brain off and just charge forward. And that might work if it's a simple sale, but if it's a complex sale, you have to really focus on who is most likely to buy. And, and today there's a lot of information, so you can really do a lot of your homework without having to talk with anybody. You got LinkedIn, you got Google, you got all these data sources, most of which are free or nearly free. And what I try and tell people is focus on that, 5 to 10% of that total addressable market that is most likely to be interested.
Okay. Gotcha. That's good advice. There you go. Breaking it down, just like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was proof in action right there. So now let me ask you some sales tips while we're talking directly about sales. What are some sales tips that you suggest to people in order to really kind of stand out in the crowd?
Well, I think it's super easy today. Don't act like a salesperson.
Surprise!
And that's kind of counterintuitive and really hard for salespeople. I think you got to act like you're in the physical world. Like if you were at a party or at a restaurant or a bar and you wanted to meet somebody or talk to somebody or a networking event, you don't take out your card and hand it to them. You talk about something you have in common, the weather, the traffic, the venue, the food, the music. You start a conversation and you build rapport. And when people start to learn that, and I think that's why questions are probably the most powerful sales tool, because it's not about you, because that person doesn't know you. So how are they going to care about you?
They don't.
They don't. Because you're no different than the person 1,000 miles away, except for you're closer.
They just don't know how cool we are.
That's right.
They just don't know.
They didn't check the news out.
That's right.
So you have to build that up. And I think people have forgot that. They think that just because I have to sell, that somebody has to buy. Like nobody has to buy. What we have to do is entice people, seduce people, engage with people at first, and understand that curiosity and interest has to be built before you start talking about what you do, and focus on the problem that you solve, not who you are and what you do.
Right. It's about them, not about us.
Right, because they don't care.
No.
Right.
You know, it's always funny to me, like how people, like when you're in a car, they'll just be like, wait, they'll just totally act the fool in their car. And it's like, well, if you were standing right next to me, how would you act that way? So if you're a salesperson trying to push your stuff in people's faces, kind of reminds me of that. Like if we were face to face, you wouldn't be acting that way. So
that's that car gives you that level of abstraction, but then you take the same type of problem, like getting onto an airplane. Nobody gets single file, but yet there's still no one fights each other. No one gives each other the bird.
Right. We should try that one day.
That'd go over really well. TSA would love that.
On the internet, yeah.
It's that proximity. But then when you smile at people and you say, oh, no, you go first. What do they do? No, it's okay. You can go. Yeah. That doesn't happen in a car. It's like.
No, definitely not. And, there are people, and when you're on the phone, it really does help to actually smile before you call somebody, because of that tonality, they can feel that energy even when they can't see your face. There have been studies done on that. So do you have a favorite question or two that you like to use? Like for me, a lot of times I'll be talking to someone, blah, 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 and then I'll be like, does that make sense? And kind of get feedback that way. So I was wondering if you had any favorite go-to lines.
I mean, you can always use current events. Like you can say Happy New Year right now. It's a great icebreaker.
Yeah.
What does everybody say back? They have to say Happy New Year back to you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's
How was your holidays? So like a contextual question like that.
Yeah.
And reverse psychology always works. Say, hey, I only have a minute. You tell them that you're busy. And I know you're not the right person, but I was hoping you might know some who is. Right?
Let him off the hook a little.
Yeah. We solve the problem of. Okay.
Yeah.
I know you don't have it, but I'm sure you're within your circle of friends. You might know somebody who does.
Exactly.
Oh, wait, how do you know I don't have that problem? I just didn't want to bug you.
Exactly.
I think that's much more human, right? Because if you go over to a neighbor's house that doesn't know you, what would you say? I know you don't know me.
But give me this.
Yeah. I
Right.
live right down the street. I don't have a snow shovel, a pick, an axe, or whatever, a cup of soup or a cup of sugar.
A bottle of wine. Okay.
Yeah. Opener. All of a sudden, you now have something in common. You respect their time and you're engaging with them and
Hmm.
you're giving them an out. And
Hmm.
you're pretty much telling them that you don't have time to bug them.
Hmm. That's a great point to set expectations up front.
Yeah.
You just let them know, whatever the situation is, and it could be over the phone. If do you have 30 seconds to have a conversation about blah blah blah, or stuff like that. I think that was a Sandlerism that I learned many years ago. Set expectations up front. Let's see. So, any other secret tips you'd like to
Well,
deploy? I
I
know
think
I'm
yeah,
pinning you pretty hard here.
the key is to just relax and be a human and don't worry about selling, worry about engaging, starting a conversation.
Hmm. Okay,
And yeah, make the
that makes
objective
perfect sense.
right.
Yeah, I'm still looking
And
for that magic bullet. Like, okay, there's got to be.
I've been looking for it for 30 years.
Yeah,
If I've learned anything, it's that stop looking for it.
exactly.
Because once you stop looking for it, you start to understand that your process becomes your magic bullet,
Mhm.
your style, your personality, your history, your context. That becomes your silver bullet, as
Mhm.
opposed to a single magic word or the
Right.
exact right phrasing, or, oh, if you call them at this time, this will work perfectly. It's people. Nothing works 100% of the time, and nothing will.
Hmm.
But if you just, make it your job to become better and better at it every day, like any other profession,
Hmm.
what does every other profession do? What does a doctor do before he operates? Right? He
Hopefully, washes his hands.
washes his hands. He's talking to the nurses. He's talking to the other doctors. They're going through a checklist. Every time you get on a plane, what's the pilot doing? Is he
Check.
having a cup of coffee, reading the newspaper? No, they're
Hmm.
checking all those buttons. He's been
Hmm.
doing it for 40 years. He knows all those buttons, but if he misses one of them, it might matter.
Yeah. Good
you know,
point. And that's interesting because a lot of salespeople fly by the seat of their pants. So if you can create the systems and the processes and the checklist, you'll feel better. I mean, it just
you
feels
will.
better to know what the heck you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And you'll be more effective, and you won't miss anything. So that's an excellent point that you
Yeah.
bring up. Yeah. So
Because like when you get into a rent a car, even though you might have driven your whole life, it's a different car.
yeah.
Right. The directionals are in a little bit different place. Where's that windshield wiper? Where's the radio? It
Hmm.
all has it. I got into one a couple of weeks ago and it had a fob and not a key. So I get into it and I'm like,
Where do I go with this? Yeah.
where's the key?
That's a little disconcerting when you first get into a fob situation.
Yeah. And you got to think every time you're talking to another person, they're a little different, right? They still have a steering wheel. They still, have an accelerator and a brake, but you got to like take a little bit of time and get acquainted with each other.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
to me, it's all about being interested more than being interesting.
Right. Because
Yeah.
they have no interest at first, right?
Hmm.
They're trying to get rid of you if you're not talking about them.
Right. So let's talk about them. That'll work.
They love
I
it.
prefer to listen to other people's stories because I already know mine, right? It's
A-
like,
And it was kind of my superpower at first because I hated talking. Is that you know,
just
here
flip
I
it
was,
on
I spent, years typing all day and not talking to people for weeks at a time.
them.
And
Yeah.
then I got into a job where I had to talk 100% of the time. So I
Mm.
found that just asking questions got me uh,
Off
you
the
know,
hook.
off the hook. And people actually liked talking about themselves.
They're like, gee, that Brian's
He's
such
so
a
interesting.
wonderful guy. I just feel so good when I talk to Brian.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you hadn't said like two words.
No.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm always curious to find out what habits do you deploy that help you be the best that you can be in your business life and your life. So I like to hear from people that are out there making things happen, what their favorite habits are.
Yeah. So I've kind of came up with this system probably about 5 years ago. I wanted to get back into running. There was a death in my family. I found out about some genetic health issues that I should address. So I had to change my whole lifestyle. I had
Mhm.
never, I probably had more vegetables like in 1 week than I had in the last decade.
That's
And
funny.
I
And that could be torturous if you're not a
Oh,
vegetarian.
it was beyond torturous.
It's
It was
like,
like drinking cough syrup every
yeah.
morning. But what I found was if you make these tiny little changes and you track them every day, it became easy. So I was a runner in high school and I go, well, let me go out walking. So I got up to like 5 miles. Well, let me run a quarter mile walk. And then by the end of the summer, I hit 13 miles one day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go, let me apply this to my work. So
Mm-hmm.
I got on Wunderlist. It's kind of an app that you just keep track of things.
Yeah, I have that one.
Yeah. So I had like my why. So every morning, the first thing I do is I look at my list of why am I doing all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to rolling over and going back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 5 to 10 whys. And then I go through my gratitude list. So I get away from, oh, it's raining out, or I got to get on a plane, all the bad stuff. I'm looking at all the good stuff.
Yeah, it makes a difference, doesn't it?
It does. And then I came to this kind of conclusion. Instead of looking at activities, I go, what can I build as assets? Meaning that I do it once
Mm-hmm.
and I use that many, many times, or I redo it and make it better. So I could have a compounding effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the calls, it's like, okay, you made the call. I did this right. I did this wrong. So next time it's just this tiny bit better. There's a
Right.
compounding. It's
So
not just,
you track your results.
I
So,
grade myself every day. I give myself an A to an F, just like in school.
mm,
And I keep it on a calendar at a year at a glance.
okay.
And it kind of holds me accountable. And I can kind of see annual patterns
Right.
of good periods and bad periods.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep track of it long enough, you go, I know this month is going to be bad, because it was bad 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Why don't I do stuff that makes it a good month?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Or understand, like, okay, not the time to launch something new this month because it's just not
yeah,
my
yeah. So,
strength month.
yeah. So my business, July and August is just dead. Every people are on vacation.
Right.
People don't want to make decisions. That should be the time where I build content or do something else
Mm-hmm. I love that.
instead of
Yeah.
trying to do something that isn't going to work.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Definitely. I have been using an app called Way of Life, and you just put in the dailies that you want to track, and it's color coded. So you get a green if you do it, and a red if you don't do it.
Yeah.
And the guy who told me about it, he said that when he gets a red, he donates $10 to a cause that he hates.
Yeah.
I thought that's awesome. Great idea. Not that he likes, that he really doesn't like. So I thought that was interesting. But that's the year at a glance is interesting. I had a kind of a calendar like that I used, and I mark it for 90-day sprints so that I can say, oh my gosh, okay, we're in week 3 of quarter 1, or whatever the situation is, and I know, okay, I said I'd get this done by this date, so I better hustle. So those visuals really do help.
They
And
do,
yeah,
because we tend to get stuck in the moment and we kind of underestimate how long things take.
yes.
And, and we end up having waves. At least I do. You have a great wave and then a down wave. And if you can look at it, like I'm looking at it right now, I can kind of know what's coming. So I can kind of prepare for it and not have a bad thing happen and try and make sure a good thing does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you do strategy sessions? Like, do you take days where you sit and plan? Do you do anything like that?
Yeah. That's kind of probably my strong point is, I'll sit out on my deck in the sun with a notepad and just, write down my goals for the year and then prioritize them and then say, why is this? because I've tended to get into the dollar amount trap. But if I get the dollar amount, what do I really get? Or do I want to build my platform, which enables the dollar amount to kind of really understand the equation that works best for me?
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to do those at least quarterly. And I actually got an accountability partner this year, a very smart guy, and I'm looking forward to it. So we set it up where we do a call every month, and we share our geniuses, right? And he brings something to the table, I bring something to the table, and then we have 3 things that we commit to doing before the next month. And then once a quarter, we get together in person and do kind of a strategy day. So I'm a big fan of having select accountability partners. So yeah. And I have another one I do weekly. So we just use the Google Drive to post everything that needs to be done that week. And it's just mostly virtual. We touch base by phone just because, we enjoy each other's company every so often. But we sit down on Sundays and we set it up and get it out there. So that's another way for salespeople to get organized, because I think that's a big piece of it, being organized.
Yeah, because I think certainly salespeople, they do the stuff that they like to do versus the stuff that needs to be done. Right.
Yeah. So on that topic, do you time block?
I do.
Sales calls?
Yeah, I time block both by day and by segment of the day. So if I find if I don't do that, stuff gets done, the stuff I like to do versus the stuff that needs to.
Right. So do you have any system around that? Like for me, I use the first half of the day. I get up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, get my kid to school. Then I get to my desk and I use that time until about 12 or 1 as proactive time. And then after that, it's reactive for people that want to have coffee, those kind of things or whatever. So that, in my mind, really helped me break it down, because before I implemented this, I felt like I was bing, like all over the place. Like I'd have a 10 a.m. meeting and then I wouldn't feel like I got anything done that day. So do you have any system like that? Or do you just...
Definitely. Yeah. So I have a calendar link. I have 3 kinds. I have a 15-minute one for people who want to sign up for my course. I have a 30-minute one for one-on-ones with my students and clients. And then I have a 30-minute one for podcast interviews. But I only do interviews on Thursday and Friday morning. Okay. So I know Wednesday is to confirm everything up, get the Skype IDs or Zoom links out, make sure get all their profiles up on my screen so I know their background and everything. But I mean, I've done 10 podcast interviews in a week or in 2 days, really.
Yeah.
So it's like boom, boom, boom. And so I know Wednesdays for that. Tuesdays is reaching out for new clients. Mondays is for content creation and talking to students who want to get into the course. Unlike, I don't have any kids, pets, or distractions around the house. So,
oh my Lord, you're so lucky. No, I've got 3 kids, a dog, a cat, a parakeet, a husband. Yeah. Oh Lord, I'm tired.
How you do it. Yeah.
It's a mess. That's great. No distractions.
Yeah. So it's kind of it's a weird existence contrast to a lot of people. Because I live in a kind of an urban area with a grocery store across the street. I literally only have to start my car to keep the battery going sometimes, because I don't drive that often.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're on your airplane, as we see there, right?
Yeah. So I fly private. So that's a lot easier.
I love that. That's awesome. All right. That's cool. So do you have any sales books or courses that you recommend, or I like to read. So, and I know a lot of salespeople listen to Audible and things like that. So which ones do you like?
Yeah, I mean, I started off with questions. So there's a bunch of sales question books. There's spin selling, questions that sell. I think it's just a great idea to get away from talking, because it's a lot harder to figure out exactly what to say versus what to ask. And
Right.
if you get the other person talking, that's 80% of selling, because
Mm-hmm.
they'll pretty much tell you if they're qualified or not,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll tell you if they're interested or not. And I find that a lot easier. And when I talk to a lot of salespeople, instead of just reading sales books, read books that your customer would read.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're selling to CMOs, what are CMOs, chief marketing officers or chief sales officers? What are they reading? So that
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of understand their vocabulary, their problems, their world. So you know what questions to ask them.
There you go. You're
Because they,
being interested.
yeah,
Yeah.
because if you just talk about you and how to go through the process, and you should learn that, but that's pretty hard. I mean, that's going to take a while. Because people, the challenger sale or this sale or that sale, it's like they position themselves as silver bullets, and they accomplish certain parts of the sales process. They might build interest, they might reframe the situation, which can be powerful, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not enough. It's like going golfing with just one club. If you're trying to hit the ball, if you need to drive it and you got a driver, great. But if you need to drive it and you got a putter, like, oh, the putter's broken. No, that the putter's used for a very certain thing. When you're 15 feet from the hole, that's the club to use, not
Mm-hmm.
when you're 300 yards from the hole.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Okay.
think people get wrapped around the axle. And I think the other problem is they read too many sales books instead of studying it, the definitive meaning of the world. You should, like a textbook. You don't read a textbook like a novel. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You read a page and then you take a nap.
I was gonna say, yeah.
You're like,
You glaze over, you
right,
read it
what's that
again for the
squiggly
fourth
line
time.
mean? Yeah. Well, you read it and you Google 5 different things, and then you Google 5 more things.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's the way you kind of got to view sales and really become a student of it. If you want quick, powerful stuff, read what they read, understand what they do, so
Mm-hmm.
you can talk about their world.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that. Like, read what your clients are reading. So that's great advice.
Yeah, I
Really.
mean, there's certainly things like Influence by Robert Cialdini.
When you said that, I was thinking Influenced by Robert Cialdini. I've read that book like at least three times. It's really interesting.
And that's it. And you should read it and take one of those things and say, how do I build this into my process? Reciprocation. How do I build that in? Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
got to give something. Okay, what can I give? Okay, I can give a book. I can give cookies. Well, I don't know if that fits. Well, I can give a compliment. I can give an idea. I can give content.
Or
And then,
contact.
right,
Yeah.
instead of like reading the whole book and saying, oh, that's real interesting, but I didn't apply any of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Reciprocation.
Yeah.
That's what I took away.
That'll get you 80% through sales, won't it?
Yeah, really well. Go into the bill.
Through life, it'll get you 80% through life.
Yeah, really well. You really well. So thank you so much for all your great tips. I'm going to kind of touch on some of the ones that I liked the most. Don't act like a salesperson. I like that. I'm like, don't be cheesy. Build rapport with people. It's really not that hard at the end of the day. It's called good humaning, good adulting. So act like you're at an event rather than over the phone or whatever. Bring that type of personality to the call, and that questions truly are powerful. They really are. They can change your world for the better. And then, have a checklist, be like a pilot or a doctor for your sales, right? I mean, I think that's really wise advice. And, I sort of have a checklist, but I'm going to go back and really look, right? And make sure it's up to date. And, have a good habit, figure out what works for you. You talked about your calendar on the wall and the compounding effect of the activity versus creating assets. I really like that. And yeah, read what your customers are reading. Great
Yeah.
advice. Kind of
Cool.
spin it. So if the listeners would like to learn more about you and what you have to offer, how can they find you?
I'm pretty easy. It's Brian, Brian. Letter G is a middle initial, and Burns, Burns, on LinkedIn.
Okay, great. And you all know where to find me. You go to joycebone or .com, or if you want to get my 90-day sprint, you could text 444-999 keyword bone, and that'll help get your goals going. So thank you for a great episode today, Brian. I really appreciate it. And until next time, y'all take care. Bye.